You are here because when you are in a relationship, you value that relationship with your partner so much that it's a high priority to you. This is an inside, unique, and effective view of the work that I do with clients to give them the advantage in their relationships. I'm Chris. I'm a relationship author and facilitator. I'm a coach and a board-certified hypnotist. I'm certified in applied neuroscience and brain health. This is an excerpt of my course, Optimizing Relationships. If you find this helpful, access to the full course is in the link below. Here we go. Now, we'll talk about feeding the relationship right now. I'll give you some examples, but your relationship is going to be fed or it's going to be starving. And that's really up to both partners. And I guess the rule of thumb would be to keep in mind that relationships are a verb as much as they are a noun. And loving each other is why most people want to get into a relationship. And that is something that you're always doing. You're always putting effort into. Now, people say it's lots of work. I understand. But again, we've just emphasized, if you're listening to this, if you're taking this in, if you're taking notes, all the things, then relationship with your partner is a priority for you. The energy that you put into it comes back to you. Remember that, okay? And if you keep putting that energy in, it becomes second nature. So it doesn't become like a dreadful job. I'm going to give you a quick example of a manager. I was giving a presentation and one of the managers spoke up afterwards saying, wow, now I have to learn all these things about psychology as a manager. There's just so many things to learn. And now I've got to learn about psychology. And it was interesting because it just so happened that that particular manager had the worst retention issues with his staff. And he had just recently lost 3 key people at once. There were a number of issues with him also with management above. Now, there was another manager who loves working with his people. He loves doing his job. He loves working with them as a team. He loves understanding where they're coming from and what they're needing and what their potential is, etc. And he actually has the most productive group that has the best retention rates, and he enjoys what he does. So it's really how you look at it. I hate to stick on the fact that that's work, right? But it really is some work that should become second nature. So what are some things you can do to feed the relationship? Give copious amounts of their love language. We'll go over that. Turn towards bids. And we'll talk about what bids are. Be a safe space for them. Hear them. We've gone over that. Be present and thoughtful. And I hear so much over the years that it's the little things that mean so much to people. The little gestures, the words, the little things that people do in the moment make a huge difference. And they add up, right? Build up your partner. Let them know you believe in them. You have their back. Support their passions and interests and support their personal care. A lot of these are ways to feed the relationship. Let's talk about love languages. Now, I'm going to preface this with the fact that a lot of people are unhappy with Gary Chapman, maybe because his work is not as inclusive as people think that it should be. And perhaps an extra emphasis on religion where some people don't agree or can't relate. Completely understand. But, even his detractors use the term love languages in their work. Okay. So I'm going to go over a number of love languages, not just his, but the ones that I found over the years that are recurring with my clients as being their main love languages are these. Now, keep in mind, love languages are not how you love or what you do for your partner, not even what you like that they do for you. They are things that your partner does or says, or how they are with you in ways that make you feel most loved. Think on that. Most loved. The main ones that came up that were main themes over the decades of my work are touch, words, service, and quality time. Those were huge for people. And I always suggest, I don't tell people, go read this book about it. What I do is I ask them about it. What do you feel your primary love language is? How you are loved, how you feel loved the most. What's your secondary one? And I usually hear these 4 items in some way or another. This is so useful because this is about feeding the relationship, right? There are other kinds. There are other types of love languages like intellectual exchange, teamwork, which is practical love language, humor, time together doing things separately, right? On your own. Protection, attention, or emotional presence, trust and vulnerability, financial. And some of these you can put in these categories, such as financial, could be service. I've never heard anyone truly loved because someone else is funny, right? But when you're enjoying humor together, that could include a lot of words said between each other. I don't know. But I've never heard someone say humor is their love language, but I have heard that humor is a main thing people look for when they're looking for a partner. Completely different thing, but helpful as well. So love languages can come into play anywhere in the relationship. So you may want to ask yourself, what are your 2 love languages? What's your primary love language? What's your secondary love language? And what are your partner's 2 love languages? And how will you give them more of theirs? See, when you find out your partner's primary and secondary love languages, you want to make a commitment, a personal commitment, to give them copious amounts of it on a regular basis. That's a big win. Believe me, it's a big win. I've come across many people who aren't receiving or feeling love through their love languages. And it's not a good scene. It's not working very well for them. And I've come across that often. So definitely keep these in mind and work on these together. Your love languages do not have to match at all. Let's talk about bids. Brought them up a couple times. Dr. John Gottman and his partner, Julie Schwartz Gottman, have done a lot of work over the years on relationships in their own right and together. And Dr. Gottman predicted, with all of his studies over 50 years, he's been able to predict with 93.6% accuracy which couples would divorce. Yeah. There's a lot of studies that he and his associates completed to get this. And I think the main part that comes down to it is that out of 100% of interactions that you have with your partner, 80% of the interactions should be something that's feeding the relationship, should be some kind of positive interaction. It's basically the 5-to-1 rule. For every negative interaction during conflict, a relationship has to have 5 or more positive reactions. You can say the same thing with interactions with each other as well. And a significant way to keep those positive reactions going towards your partner is when a bid is made. All right. A bid is any attempt from one partner to another for attention, affirmation, affection, or any other positive connection. These are important. Now, when it really comes down to it, it matters whether you're turning toward your partner's bids or you're turning away from or against. So it's really important when your partner comes to you with something that you make an effort, just a conscious effort to turn toward that bid, whatever it may be, right? If you're turning away from it, rolling your eyes, ignoring them, just giving a shrug or whatever. I mean, sometimes a shrug can be an understanding between 2 people. But really, you've got to watch what your reaction is to your partner. Some bids that can be brought to a partner could be some kind of affectionate touching, right? It could be a handshake, a pat, a squeeze, a back pat, a shoulder rub, something like that. It could be a facial expression, a smile, blowing a kiss, things like that. Playful touching, maybe a dancing around or a hip bump, different gestures, such as doing something for your partner, perhaps carrying something for them, holding open a door, offering a place to sit, handing over a utensil. Really, it can be anything. You come to them with a situation, right? You could be laughing with them. You could be, talking with them. There's all kinds of things you can be doing. Your partner comes to you with something, right? And they say, oh, I really want to talk to you about this. Or one of your kids needs to be picked up, or all of those are bids. Look what I found. I found this. I thought you could use it. Or, hey, I looked this up on the internet. I thought it may help you. Things like that. Those are bids. There are all kinds of little bids that someone can make toward their partner. So it's really easy math. Somebody's bringing something, turning toward you. You can turn toward them, or really create some lovely conflict and turn against them. So that's something to watch for. Bids are very key in your interactions. Be really conscious of them. Now, you can ask yourself, how can you respond better to bids? And how can you make more bids to your partner? Now let's talk about something that ties a lot of this in. This is actually not about sympathy. And it doesn't always have to be about compassion, which we want that. We want that. But empathy is the relationship queen. It's the relationship warrior, the relationship soothsayer. This is big. This is required for an amazing relationship, for a healthy relationship. When in doubt, have empathy. Try to understand your partner as much as you understand yourself. I run into too many people that have this great understanding themselves, but they're not bothering to understand their partner. And to me, you might as well be on your own then, right? Because you're in a relationship, which requires understanding of both parties. Now, there are different types of empathy, okay? And there's mostly emotional and cognitive empathy. And of course, sympathy and compassion can be a part of that, with the emotional part of empathy. That can be a part of it sometimes. But to me, I'm asking that you have cognitive empathy in place as much as you possibly can, as close to all the time, okay? Then you can definitely work to bring in more of the compassion, right? Because you definitely need a lot of that. But empathy is an understanding of important information. It's important. Empathy is a skill that, if developed, it gives you and your interpersonal relationships a huge advantage. Now, I'm going to tell you something that I don't tell a lot of people. And when I have couples come in crisis, I don't tell them this because, I want to help them and they're upset usually. But I require it. So I do everything I can to establish this early on, to establish empathy. If one of those partners is unwilling to have empathy, to have an understanding for where the other partner is coming from, what their position is, what their wants and needs are, what their experience is, if they're unwilling, there is not much chance to get through the crisis. And that's very unfortunate. And I've seen that. If both partners are willing to have empathy, there is so much magic that can happen. There are amazing things that can happen. And of course, what I mean is they get through the crisis and they're feeling the love again. And they're having this empathy and they're feeling this connection that they haven't felt in a long time. That's a wonderful moment. And we can usually make that happen quicker than you may think if both partners are willing to have that empathy. It's very difficult to see one partner has it and the other one won't. It's really tough to see, but there's reasons for that, and I understand. So this is required.
Chris, could you give an example of one partner showing empathy to another?
Well, in the facilitation, when they come in, they'll both be sharing, where they're coming from one at a time, right? And when one partner talks about how they're feeling, I'll check in with the other partner. Now, I do a whole acknowledgement exercise that shows me what's lacking. which is close to the empathy exercise initially. And the empathy exercise is literally me asking the other partner if they understand where the other partner is coming from, and to see if they really do, or if they're just sitting there in the queue waiting to share like where they're coming from. That is just not going to work. It doesn't work. So it would be someone saying, yes, I understand that he's been suffering and he's been going through this and it's been tough for him. I can see that because, I had said this and we had done this. And I do see that. Now that's an example of someone having empathy. Example of someone not having empathy is me saying, well, can you understand how they could have been, hurt by that or affected by it? No, I won't. I don't want to. That's the antithesis of the empathy. It's really sad to witness. And we try to do everything we can to mitigate that. But yeah, it's really an understanding. I want people to do it without being prompted. And in our work, they eventually start doing that. But this is kind of like an underused muscle that people need to build up. And I think most people need to build this muscle up more. And they don't do it because they don't value it. They don't think that it's valuable. And a lot of times, even worse than that, they think it takes away their power, or they think it makes them agree with the other person when they don't agree. They think it takes away from their story and their experience. And it's just not true. It's how to build a bridge. So empathy is the bridge. This can be for any relationship in just about any situation, and it is really helpful. And I'm going to throw a curve right now. Yes, it's important to see your own part. There's two sides, unless you're in it alone, which nobody's come in a relationship being in it just by themselves. There's nobody else that exists. But seeing the other side puts you at an instant advantage. Okay, instant advantage. I actually help my clients use empathy when they may be going through a difficult divorce where the other side is mistreating them and maybe being unfair and maybe lying about them and things like that. I help them to have empathy for why the other partner would be doing that, because it's useful information. And then we could figure out like maybe strategy to use from there, that point on. Empathy is important information. It's just absolutely important. And a lot of times in facilitation, I can't get partners to have compassion right away for the other. And I understand that. That comes later, and that's great. But empathy is a huge advantage in any situation. So really work hard at as much energy as you put into understanding you. Work hard at trying to understand the other side, because it gives you extremely helpful information. Also, I wanted to add, what can keep you from having empathy? Not feeling safe, not feeling heard, feeling defensive, all those things. I get it, but I'm still going to double down and say that empathy is a big advantage for you. Also, if you're working on your relationship, you want it to be better, it's a big advantage for you and your partner and your relationship for sure. So ask yourself, how have you shown empathy recently? And how has your partner or loved one shown empathy recently? What was the instant outcome of that? Check in on people's energy when that happens, because it changes things. How can you make having empathy for your partner part of your default when in relationship interaction? Or even if you're not interacting, how can you have empathy for them as your default? Super, super important.